try to greatly condense this, and I'll caveat this. This was a talk I gave at Hacker Halted about a week ago, and my hope was to give a much more verbose version and give you guys some fun stuff. So like Brandon, some of the guys were up in the VIP, and I was kind of testing this thing out. So we're gonna do some demo ponage and all that good stuff. So pray to the demo gods and all that type of stuff that you do. But I'm gonna keep it really informal. So the concept of Hacker Halted was hackers in the zombie apocalypse type of stuff. And so the first phase of this was, what do you do when you don't have digital? You're in an age, you don't have the internet, zombies are roaming the earth, whatever, you make your assumptions. So I'm gonna, I think anybody not have any idea what this talk is gonna be about? Or like, have y'all, I know that for the majority of people here, we've been talking, somebody's either seen little pieces of it because I've been messing with this stuff for a while. But anyway, so in the end, we'll pwn some stuff. And at some point, we will have to turn off the video if you want to see the really fun stuff. And if we had more time, we would we'd spend some time. That was a little bit about me. Anyways, crap, I didn't take that out of there. I'm gonna have to blend that out. So yeah, so besides Charleston coming up, I'll probably be there in November, pending babies and stuff coming when they say they're gonna come. But I'm gonna zip through some of this stuff. So I'm gonna give you a little background on the emergency alert system. Anybody know what the emergency alert system is? Sure. Yeah, let's get interactive. So the random crap here, and I'm gonna throw this out. And there's a couple of people, I don't know where Jake went. He was around earlier, but somebody text Jake. He wanted to see this, but I'm going to show you how responsible disclosure fails at different points, and without saying don't go do this stuff. So the concept is that you're hacking in an analog world, and you catch one of these, but the likelihood of the
emergency. This is not a test.
The likelihood is that that's how you would find out about the zombies coming to eat you and stuff. And so we want to cover the basics of surviving in the zombie apocalypse. And you're screwed. The one thing that I finally liked. Anybody watch The Walking Dead? Anybody watch that show? All right. So the first thing, I don't know, maybe it was just me, but for the first time, and God knows when, I saw them actually using radios, people actually communicating and stuff like that. It blows my mind, right? I mean, you got ham operators in the room. I think we got a few. So I'm going to zip through some of this because the majority of people that were at Hacker Halted had absolutely no idea the history of some of this stuff, and they had no idea what this was. But so what is the emergency alert system? It is the third iteration of a national alerting system that was intended to, in its root, which was CONELRAD, broadcast presidential messages around the United States for mainly purposes of announcing global destruction through nuclear holocaust and all that kind of stuff. So if you were lucky enough to hear it, had it ever happened, you were probably going to die an even more terrible death. The worst was yet to come. But it was never really used for this purpose. And so back in, I don't know, somewhere in the 80s or whatever, they redid it into the emergency broadcast system. So it had they changed the logo, and yes, it looked equally as awful. And it, but the purpose of it kind of shifted to, hey, we've got this system in place here now. Why don't we use it for something like, weather alerts and things like that? And we can, so kind of the purpose, that's when we started to see, severe thunderstorm warnings and all that type of stuff. And that then evolved back in '97 into the emergency alert system, and which is now in another state of massive change, which we'll talk a little bit about if we have time. But some of the newer technologies that are coming out, so you get the little alerts on your phones now, right? Amber alerts and maybe tornado warnings and stuff. But anyways, so those are integrations, expansions of systems, and so we need to learn some acronyms here. An ENDEC is an encoder decoder. These are terms that come up in documentation and other random things. And So the same is the specific area message encoding protocol, and what that is that's the modem tones that you're hearing. And so there's a protocol that establishes what's in those tones and what it's communicating to downstream devices and so forth. And so then you have IPAWS, which is kind of the government's way of like conglomerating this next gen system, which is going to be the emergency alert system is one piece of it. So we're going to talk about that, but then ultimately we're going to pwn some things. Anyways, RWT and RMT are required weekly and monthly tests. So by law, FCC radios, like to get an FCC license to broadcast above certain, amplitudes and to have a frequency space that you are allowed to operate in, you do not own that space or anything else. One of the stipulations of that license comes with the requirement to operate emergency alert equipment. It has to be an FCC-approved vendor and all sorts of stuff, and we're going to get into some of that. But you have to fire off these required weekly and monthly tests to make sure your stuff works, all right? So we've heard that. You may see it go across the screen in the middle of Oprah or whatever it is that you, Maury or is, I don't think Springer's on anymore, but that used to be a very popular time for those things to occur. And there are multiple different ones of these. So the reason I now draw TTS, text-to-speech, we'll have some fun with that later. But EAN, emergency action notification. So the reason I bring these two out is because there are messages that are intended to be like relayed, and there are messages that aren't. So there's the we're going to talk a little bit about how that works, but just because a message fires doesn't necessarily mean that it is intended for distribution, if that makes sense. So so that's a key concept that we'll talk about here. So it's required by the FCC, and love those fellas at the freaking FCC. You have to turn in logs of this stuff. And back in the day, it was like a big technological advancement when the radio station people like got automated emergency alert equipment, which meant that they didn't have to staff 24/7. And so they could do things like put towers out in crazy places, and they didn't have to write it down on a piece of paper anymore and mail it in and all this type of stuff. And so they got ones that like printed paper, like thermal paper, and that was like this massive advancement. Anyways, I digress. So now we've got some of these migrations back in 2011. They're standing up this new thing, this IPAWS system, in a protocol called CAP, which sort of replaces the same protocol. So the I'm going to say that like 20 times, and you guys are going to laugh at me every time. Yeah. Anyways, so how does this crap work? So how does this work? Over-the-air relay. You remember the game telephone? Like, all right, so you lean over to your friend, and what happens at the end, we all know. Well, yeah, we've been playing this game. The FCC has been playing this game for, I don't know, like 60 years now. And so the idea is that they seed a message into the pipeline, and stations monitor other stations, and they receive notifications that, based on their configurations for their automated systems, may or may not relay. And I'm sure you can imagine some fun stuff. But what does this joker look like? And these are not my. I'm going to draw. Most of these diagrams in here that's actually a FEMA. That's from FEMA.
Those aren't just rubber band animals. They look like that's crazy.
Jackson Pollock designed this, so there may have been some cracking hookers, but regardless, so something I'll throw out. You'll notice like a lot of people have this understanding of radio, and not necessarily ham operators or other things, but how radio gets broadcast and that type of thing. And it's not necessarily in nice, sweet concentric circles, right? I mean, all sorts of things interrupt how that frequency will propagate through the airwaves and through over obstacles and other things that might be in its way. And so the other thing too to note or to think about is that the majority of these are AM stations. So when you see these huge swaths of, how in the world does that thing cover like 4 states or something, is because these are AM radio stations, and AM carries, it's all in the physics, and I'm not going to talk. I'll talk a little bit about it. But the other piece of this is that radio station directional changes change fairly frequently. And the reason for that is that if I've got a 100,000 watt FM radio station, which is the highest that the FCC will allow them to licenses, and it costs a lot of money. That's a lot of money, right? 100,000 watts continuous power. That's a lot of that's a big electric bill, right? So if I'm broadcasting to Nashville, why would I want, and my tower is located on the outskirts of it, why would I waste like 40 or 60% of my electricity focusing signal in a direction that nobody lives? Does that make sense? So if I can use physics, use the laws of crazy things and antenna design and, make it do crazy pear shapes or whatever and go to places where people are, that's probably a better use of my cache. So that's why these things look so freaking funky. So I'm going to throw something out here that, all this stuff is public information. So part of this talk could have been like a big thing on like OSINT and how it really works. It's kind of fun. OSINT people, anybody? Yep. Hell yeah. All this stuff is online, and you can literally, we'll see if we can find some good stuff. I'm going to show you an awesome little Google Earth plugin if we have some time. One of the other things that there's this thing called like big pieces of steel that stick up in the sky, and so it's very hard to find these things. It's like, the leprechaun at the end of the rainbow with a pot of gold or something. But there's not a whole lot of anything cryptic about this. This is really just, you can go out there and you can find all this information. So we'll look at some of these awesome little plans like this, which tell you exactly how the state of Georgia propagates its messages and who is who and what radio station to contact if you have a problem. And anyways, you can think of evil little things to do with that. What can we infer? This thing is really goddamn old. And it was the entire protocol and all the stuff was based on stuff that, is 50 years old or more. These devices are ancient in most cases. And back in the original, back in the day, the barrier to this was like, nobody will ever have an FM and transmitter powerful enough to do this or that. And, why would anybody ever want a pirate radio or, I don't know. So it's needless to say, security was never considered, blah, 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 blah. Infrastructure, why do you care? So we were talking about zombies, right? And so there's some fun stuff that we'll look at here in a minute and why in a zombie apocalypse you would want to go there. But there's some fun stuff in a hacker world why you would want to go there too. So there's this awesome little Google Earth plugin. If we have some time at the end of the talk or if you guys are interested, we can actually like zoom in and zoom out and play around with it. It's a lot of fun. But you can see nifty stuff like this, which is not just the antenna, which that's a massive antenna. That's off of this, that's one of the Google Earth images down there, but you see like those little lines going off of it and stuff. Those are all the point-to-point connections that are licensed off of that tower. And so these guys at Cavell and Mertz were kind enough to take like the entire FCC database and plot it on a Google map or on Google Earth for you. So you can friggin' like blow up, zoom out, do all sorts of crazy stuff, pan, tilt, street view, all this type of stuff, and you'd be like, oh, that's the satellite dish. And then you click over to it and you can see like, oh, they have a site ID here, and that bottom thing down there says that they have a ComSat 900 megahertz oral studio antenna laser link, or not laser link, microwave link that gets the signal from the studio down to the tower that you might man in the middle or whatever. Anyways, might possibly. I'm not saying that's ever been done or anything. Star 94 in Atlanta, but this infrastructure is really stable. It's been out there for a very, very, very long time. A lot of this stuff is portable. We'll show you how portable in a few minutes. And one of the other reasons for this is shelter. And so back in the day, I'm going to kind of go through this. So back in the days of CONELRAD and all this stuff, they established this concept of primary entry points. And they strategically located them around the United States. There were 33 to 34 of them. Now they're going up to like 77. And there's a reason for this. So like Hurricane Katrina really showed a big lapse in public infrastructure and our ability for like cellular to be a reliable means of communication and other things in a national emergency. And so what they found, though, in their audits of this was like that radio and terrestrial radio operations were way, way less affected and were very, very reliable and other things. And that had to do with some pieces of it being some of the requirements that they did initially for CONELRAD, which was originally designed to survive nuclear winter. So that might be an indication as to why this might be a good infrastructure. But, and it was built back in the 50s too, right? So, but one of the things that's really neat in a zombie apocalypse is that these certain primary entry points actually have requirements under the rules to have things like 30 days of on-site self-sufficient power, which is a crap ton of diesel. All right, I'll show you a tank in a minute. They have to have like a fallout shelter style environment, and it has to have duplicate studios that are designed to operate and support individuals for 30 days or more at a time in those facilities. So that's kind of cool, right? You know, in zombie apocalypse, that's where I'm friggin' going. And what's nice about this is that there's probably one really close to you, and it's all public information, so I would encourage you to look it up. But here's an example, and so I had people, we're going to talk OSINT, right? This was a very recent article at a radio station in North Carolina published, like, here's some pictures of all of our equipment, our brand new FEMA-funded transmission site, and, you know, oh, that looks like, you know, a great place that if I were to get into it, that, you know, yeah, razor wire and all that type of stuff, and a you know, F5-proof, tornado-proof facility. I might want to sit in there with a big friggin' tank of diesel running behind me, and but anyways, all right. Nobody cares about zombies. What's fun about these pictures over here, though, is that that's, you know, 50, 60 years ago, whenever it was that it was implemented and all that type of stuff. And then the bottom picture is a couple of years ago, and the article actually is very particular to say, like, this is the same equipment and it still works. It is 100% functional. So it's pretty friggin' awesome, in my opinion. Like, you get in there and you see, like, what was the Transformers movie or something like that, where they go in, or one of those movies, they get stuck in an underground bunker that was like a backup presidential facility, and anyway, nobody cares. So, but yeah, that the reality is that equipment that everybody thought was so stupid, like, why would that work? You know, I'm gonna hook up a tube amplifier and the crap still works. So some of these devices, though, so what does this system look like now? It looks a little bit more like this. And after we turn the video off, I'll go into a lot of fun with these devices. Jake, I see you back there. You'll so yeah, I'm gonna some of the I will caveat this. One of the demos that I was going to do, I'm not going to do, and I'll explain why later. But it had something to do with maybe in the state of Tennessee, like the other day, some EAS infrastructure had some problems, and I know that I'm doing something right when people start calling me and emailing me and like, did you see this? Did you do? I was like, I am not even in Tennessee right now. No, I did not do that. But there's only a few manufacturers. They're listed. Their devices, they're really awesome about, like, so, and also you can buy them online or on eBay. Fun. So they're really old, they're really crappy, and they have a lot of holes in them, and we'll go into some of those. You'll notice something there, like these awesome configurations, which are like password admin 1111 and fun stuff like that. And then now that we've got this awesome new IPAWS protocol, and I know it's kind of grainy to see there, but what that's saying is, like, select the server that you want to connect to receive your alerts from, and you'll notice the absence of a certain username and password, and you may or may not be able to uncheck the boxes to misconfigure your device that would allow it to not authenticate HTTPS or any of those types of things. That's a feature. And then you look at other things, which are, I'm actually going to show you. So any developers, I know we had some web guys in here. How long ago did you ever operate in an era where you wrote web calls to a pipe, to a FIFO pipe? How long ago was that? Well, it is alive and well, and I will show it to you later. Yeah, would you say that's a modern approach to? No. All right. So the other piece of this is, so you've got some really old software that's really crazy and convoluted, and you like, I'll call it. Notice how many friggin' tabs there are in this thing, and how many little check boxes and buttons and all this stuff. I mean, it's insane. So these things are so friggin' hard to configure and get them working that that these guys have awesome little web forums where they all get together and try to help each other. And post things like this, which I wish I could make that bigger, but literally that's his IP config. His Sage ENDEC configuration on how to configure TCP/IP for this joker to get it to its CAP server. That may be his D-Link whatever router with his port forwards of all the stuff. And maybe I'll find the picture in a minute and blow it up. But and then, you know, he's showing me the equipment, right? You know, hey, look at my stuff. I'm awesome and cool, and I wear flannel. And This was recent. This was I wish that this was like the exception to the, no, this stuff is insane to configure, and these guys are very, very helpful to each other, and it's not hard to, it may sound kind of crazy, but it's actually hard to set up a fake identity of this, because these guys, there's so few of them that they all know each other. Like, if you come in here, you're like, yeah, I'm Bob at WKRP in Cincinnati, and you're like, yes, piss off, like I know Bob, and no. But so yeah, I can neither confirm nor deny. But so I'm gonna, as I said, responsible disclosure has failed, and so this system has existed and has been allowed to persist in this state for quite a while. And Kevin Poulsen, anybody know who Kevin Poulsen is? I hope to God you do. Wasn't he like before Mitnick was cool and all that stuff? Noah, you were like, wasn't Paulson arrested before Mitnick and everything? Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's the original. Anyways, if this goes on the internet, yeah, I'm an idiot. So I don't remember history very well. But hopefully you'll take a chance to read that. Any takers on like what year this was published? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Kevin Poulsen was, he wasn't hacking quite that early, but this was back in 2002. So, and then most of these vulnerabilities were known well before that, and it wasn't that nobody wanted to disclose them. The issue was that when engineers and FCC broadcasters and other things went to the FCC to talk about this, they were like, if you tell anybody, we'll take your license away. So, it's literally security through intimidation and security through obscurity and every little other bad thing that you could possibly mention. But let's go a little bit further with this, and the idea of like that the FCC and the government has a means to directly interrupt the broadcast of television or radio stations at their whim, and they are, deploying technology, if you want to, that, like the things where the little triangles, I've got actually like FEMA documents where they'll show like the, the little triangles, you tornado warning in your area, all this type of stuff that you see on the weather, like where they're literally going to have integration with carriers to say, anybody in that triangle, GPS located inside of that box, like send them specifically, if they're in the carrier areas to that, like send them messages that a tornado is coming their way. So you can take this, yeah, they know where you are, a big deal, whatever, but, this could be used to silence or subvert a lot of stuff, take over cell phones, all this stuff is getting interrupted, and they could even possibly, God dang it, they took me over. It's like rickrolled me. They took me over, bad joke. So we're gonna talk a little bit about some of these vulnerabilities. Same encoding, so that message that you hear, that modem tone and all that type of stuff, that's all this information is public, and there's an awesome guy named Flux or DC Flux. He talked at DEF CON 16 on how to more or less create tones and do this stuff. But he was doing something like really cutting edge back in, I think it was 2008. It's in the slide. Back in 2008, and he was doing things because for some reason like digital tone generators, I guess, didn't exist or something in 2008. I don't know where I was, but I would have thought you'd just get like a freaking MP3. But no, he's like, this is how broadcast engineers think, I guess, and he did it the real man's way, which is he's like getting the crystal diode stuff, and mounting them to his own boards and creating tone generators with, I would have just been like, okay, record that snippet, place here. Anyways, so that was literally like the security mechanism that they thought. They were like, people would have to buy these diodes, and what they did, the whole security mechanism of SAME is that they took, it's not one that beep that you hear, that ooh, it's not one tone, it's two, and it's two known frequencies that they put together, and for some reason that's really friggin' hard to do, I guess, you know what I mean? Like, you had to create hardware to do that back in the day, so that was the concept of what made this difficult. So there is no timestamp. There is no authorization header. There is no anything. And most of these devices, well, I take that back. There is a timestamp, but most devices did not have the logic programmed into them to decode the timestamp and know that it either was in the past or in the future or anything else. So you can call that a developer win or whatever, but that was an FCC-approved device that didn't even fully follow the stuff. So when I've disclosed personally, some of the issues that I found in the EAS back several years ago, it was a bunch of BS, like, nope, that can't happen, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all I got to do is replay a message, and those devices will take old messages and will replay them. And nope, that can't happen. But then you find stuff like this where the FCC finds a movie studio $1.9 million for this recent movie, Olympus Has Fallen, where they actually created a movie trailer for Olympus Has Fallen, and they use like real snippets of EAS in the thing, and it like might have gotten like broadcast out on some TV and radio stations and may have like caused some issues downstream, and so they not only find I think it was like Viacom or somebody like that. Maybe I got a link in the end of the thing. You can go. I can't remember who it was, but this whole concept of like that I can't just record a message off of the radio or whatever and play it back, or that I even have to have a well-formatted message is complete bull crap, and we'll demo that in a moment. In case there's any. So, any hammer operators understand know what frequency shadowing is? Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna do like a quick attempt to do it. So the reason I show you this is like you probably know about like Wi-Fi's, the Wi-Fi's, as we just learned, right? The Wi-Fi's. What happens when you see like signal charts like this, right? It means that you're probably not operating the best, that you're closer to one than another, et cetera, et cetera. But the difference is like you have SSIDs that show that they're different and stuff like that, right? They may be operating on the same set of channels and frequencies, for example, but the signal strength and stuff like that really doesn't matter as much, because I'll tell it what SSID I want to connect to. So there's a means of, not necessarily authentication, but where you can say that even though that one's weaker, I want to change to it. But what happens when you have multiple ones of different strengths on the same SSID, right? You try to connect to the closer, stronger one, right? By default. And so what in effect happens is you create this thing, it creates this thing called a frequency shadow. And Wi-Fi is not exactly a great example of this, because when you think about other technologies like FM radio or most any radio frequency, there is no authentication, there's no SSID, there is no interchange or interaction. It's strongest wins. And so if I'm closer and louder, you listen to me whether you want to or not. And so we effectively create, here I am in my umbrella, and we get awesome things like this. And can anybody see where this is going? So we'll have some fun with this in a minute. So how is this made possible? And I'm gonna throw out a couple things. You ham radio operators and other things will know this. Like frequencies behave very differently, especially like here in Tennessee, right? You got mountains and crazy stuff and trees, and you get downtown and you can't pick up your favorite radio station and all those types of things, and you go deep in the building and your cell phone doesn't work and all that stuff. All these things are impacted by some basic concepts that are called reflection, diffraction, and shadowing, and there's some other terms for it, but propagation is what it's technically called. And so there's just so many considerations. If I'm sitting right into the tower, I expect to have a strong signal. I go into the city, I may have a little bit weaker one. It bounces off of buildings. And the reason it all changes is like, why can I pick up one station and not the other, and all those types of things? It all has to do with these frequencies respond differently based on so many different variables. These guys, the engineers that do this stuff and troubleshoot this stuff on a day-to-day basis are friggin' geniuses. And so I'm not, belittling them by showing social engineering how effective it is against them. They're great guys, and they're just a little bit odd.
Hey, to interrupt your talk for a second, we got a special guest.
Ooh, whoa! Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John McCann. I'm breaking the emergency alert system. Should we breaking the emergency alert system? Should we skip ahead to demo? I'm almost to demo. Yeah.
No, hey, I'm just.
Oh, you're hanging out.
So.
Okay, sure you don't want to?
Please.
You can come and talk.
Anyway.
Okay. So we're talking about zombies and why you would want to do this. Your typical stuff. You don't have a computer to help you out. So why would you want to do this, or where would this be useful? So some analog scenarios would be, I can't get too close, but the signal is shadowable. So maybe that signal is pretty far away, and I want you to listen to me instead of them, and we'll have some fun with this. You can do some things we talked about, like uplink hijacking, where you get in the way of all that awesome information that the FCC gave you about who's listening to who and why, and maybe have it on that Google Earth thing that you can perfectly see it. So if I climbed right there on that tower, I may be able to dish this right that way. And then maybe you can have like an MP3 of your favorite EAS message, and you may have. I'll show you a fun little. There's an app for that. So we'll have some fun with that. And not that you guys don't do this, I mean, but like Hacker Halted, this was new for a lot of these guys, which it's great that they're there. But we've got a little bit different crowd here, right? So like, how the hell do we get signal to this tower out in the middle of friggin' nowhere? They're not going to drag fiber backhaul to this thing to get LTE or WiMAX to it, right? We're going to friggin' use point-to-point, to create our own backhaul and stuff like that. So yeah, you could have fun with this as we've alluded to, right? So you want to survive, you're going to survive. What do we need? We need some awesome stuff like this little device right here. So very portable, right? This is an FM transmitter, slightly more powerful than the one that you might attach via your iPhone or whatever, but we'll have some fun with that in a moment. Very inexpensive, serves a lot of fun purposes. You just need a same message, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then optional, you can use like a software-defined radio or something like that to, you can use a software-defined radio to watch this stuff. And so we'll do some of that right now. I'm going to try and, you guys ready to watch something, have a little fun? All right. It may take me a second. No, we're fine so far. We haven't committed any crimes yet. And I'm not that I would admit to them anyways. So one of the things that plays into this, so you see this FCC Part 15, and you'll see that stamped on a lot of your devices. And what FCC Part 15 says is that there are legal amounts that you're allowed to operate within, and me saying any more than that would be an indication that I might have some ideas to what that is, and I need that plausible deniability. So, yeah, I have no idea. I've never read that thing. I did some research that said that might be something I want to check out. But so when we operate in FCC Part 15 mode, and I'm going to show, before I get into that, let's, so antennas for some of these things. Yeah, I may have a few of those. So stop, demo time. Let's go here. I'm going to, so that I was doing this upstairs, and I was like, I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm going to try to mirror this instead so I can actually see what the crap is, and we'll get to some of that stuff in a minute. Yeah, I got a lot of fun stuff here. Okay, let's see. Hopefully the demo gods will be kind.
For you, the easiest way for you to make sure that your home is taken care of
okay.
is by talking to us.
So what are we watching here? We're watching, we're listening to FM radio. We can zoom in, we can zoom out. I'm going to turn this volume down a little bit. So I've got a station here that has a relatively decent signal strength and other things, and we're going to, before I do that, let me make sure I put it in the right mode. So this thing is a little bit temperamental. That's what you get from $70 from China on Amazon. But, so we see we're listening on 92.0 right up here, right? Or 92.9. And so, let's see. So if I offset this, so I know like I'm not going to be able to overcome that signal there. What do we got? We got some other stuff going. So we see some like latent stuff, some really low quality stuff out here. Looks like we can bump it to like 93.3, right? Let's see here. So, I stand something up there and there's nothing there, and I can kind of see that, this, obviously I turned something on, right, and it's all right. But it's not very strong, because you can see how much stronger, even though I'm sitting right here, right, I mean, this antenna is listening and stuff. That's a pretty weak signal, right, compared to the other one. You can see how hot, like, that density makes you, so there are certain wonderful little things that, those fellas at the friggin' FCC like to do. And then we're going to kind of, let's see if this will be kind to me. So now we're going to kind of maybe do something like this. And no, I'm gonna. So we watched what that did right there, right? We can see we did a lot of stuff, and then I'm gonna kind of make a little modification here, and I'm gonna.
10 years, 100,000 power drain warranty. Doc 40872, 36 month lease plus tax tag license, $4.99 processing included.
more fun to come on that. Just for a second. So let's go back over here, and we'll see if we have time for some of this stuff. So, I'm going to try another one here in a second, but so did you survive the zombie apocalypse? Maybe you were lucky enough to have something. So now we get into this whole thing. So one thing that I do know is a crime, and I'm not going to do, and would never advocate anybody do this, but I'm going to just kind of give you an example of what it does. So the same protocol. I'm hoping this works. I didn't have a chance to get that. Brandon was up to, anyways. Yeah, this one's fun. So you might be able to, we're attackers. We like to combine attacks, right? Like one vector doesn't necessarily equal win. Pop and shell the shell is just the beginning, right? So let's go back over here. Where did it go? So some of the fun things that I love about broadcast stuff is, and this is an awesome software that is out there and available on the interwebs, and this is a software that's used to relay emergency alerts. And I'm going to break out my handy dandy app, and I'm going to show you why the fellas at the friggin' FCC don't want. So I can do things like replay, and I can see that I've played messages and other things before, and hopefully this will be nice to me, because I was trying to show it to Jake earlier and it was not being happy. So and be patient. Be patient. If my Collie, don't fail me now. Oh, and then it, mother. There we go. So, it hasn't even finished replaying the message, right? But what this is supposed to be is an emergency alert that's, obviously this is a joke app that I got off the Android store, and that shouldn't work. Why does that work? Well, I have no friggin' clue. Actually, I do, because I can go look at the logs and see exactly what it was. And I may have done this a couple of times, but there's a reason why I'm not playing this over the radio, is because I don't want to get fined $1.9 million like Viacom or whoever it was. And so I can see some fun stuff in here. Now, here's the difference. You remember we talked about those required weekly tests and monthly tests and other things like that. So you'll notice that, what was this, at 937? Yep, right there, which is very, very tiny and impossible to read. What that says is emergency action notification. It gives me the timestamp. It gives me the file and the audio file that it created to replay and all this other kind of stuff. And it gives me some fun stuff like that it came from a PEP. That's what that PEP right there means. And that it's an emergency action notification, which means that it should be relayed. And then it gives me some other stuff as far as the codes and other things that was there. So that WR means was for the state of Wisconsin, which, that's the other piece. They're like, oh, well, if you'd have to know what code and all this stuff, because the only place that would replay that is Wisconsin. It's like, well, maybe. And so we'll go into here, and we're going to, I'm going into a little bit more now. So, it's not hard to get your hands on this, so I'm going to, but when we, no, we're okay at the moment. Please do, because I do get excited about this. So, emergency action notification. Now, here's the thing. This is the default config as it comes from the vendor. Okay, like I literally downloaded and installed the software, and this is what is on these boxes when they come from them. And so, pretty much, they're designed to operate. So, these devices don't have radios in them, and the idea is that when you go to, like, if I'm a broadcaster, I have to listen to I have to use my state's emergency alert plan, which may be, like, right there on the internet. And this may be for this state. And it tells me exactly who, like if I'm in West Tennessee, that I have to listen to these guys, 105.1, and I have to do this and I have to do that, right? So I'm not breaking any laws here, right? this is all OSENT, and maybe you'll listen, FCC, and friggin' told you years ago, and now we've got zombies friggin' on the airwaves, and come arrest me, I guess. But this is how they come. And so the idea is that you feed an audio feed from that radio station into the device, and why would they configure anything else? Like, how could it get a message that it wasn't supposed to get, right? Maybe? Anybody? No takers? We already covered that. So, yeah. Thank you, Ski Boy. So where am I going next? So I kind of hinted at this, and so obviously that was the concept, was like, you know, in the analog apocalypse of things, how do you survive? And the reality is, it's like that's actually a little bit harder, because it actually means that you have to acquire something and do a little bit of research before you do it. So we'll get into digital, why I love you, and hope that you internets never die for me. And the reason for this is that I talked about that next iteration, the IPAWS stuff, and these are like FEMA slides, right? It has the friggin' logo down there. This is their vision. This is where they're going, and this is the stuff that a lot of this is already implemented to different degrees. And they have these awesome centralized servers because they thought this would be a brilliant idea, right? We can just deploy this stuff over the internet because that'll be awesome. And so we can hand it out to these digital EAS devices like PBS down there, and you can get it over the internet, and people can get alerts on Google, and there's actually a Google page of alerts that have all this overlaid on maps. I can't remember what it is, but you can go find it. And then the idea that I can allow federal, state, local, city, county, municipality governments to issue alerts to to people in their districts and other things, because we now have the technology. And so there's a web portal out there somewhere, and we'll visit that in a moment. And I just have something to say about this, that another FEMA slide. Is anybody from West Virginia? I'm sorry. Mountain Dew and meth, I guess, is all that comes to mind. But EAS technology is not really it. So how long did this take before? So obviously, these devices have been mandated since like 2011 or something to go to this digital standard for them to be able to receive them. It is still secondary under the regulation to the over-the-air relay, though. So the over-the-air relay is still the primary. This is a secondary mechanism to inject messages into this national architecture. And so IO Active released this thing after, anybody hear about like 2013, the whole zombie thing in Montana and all that stuff? And that was like shocking, right? We've made massive advancements, and we're going to turn off the video in a minute, and I'll show you how massive they were. And so the claim was that the way that these devices were exploited was that the devices shipped with firmware that included the root SSH keys in them, and that somehow somebody got smart enough and reverse engineered the firmware and all that type of stuff. Whatever, that's the story that they're telling, and we'll go with it. But they also alluded to other vulnerabilities that they did not release in the report. And let's just put it this way: diffing the firmwares is always fun, right? Anybody do that ever? So this was like the first known exploitation of this system digitally that I'm aware of. I'm sure that somebody out there like that hasn't done something or somewhere. Yeah, there's a ton of other ones, but yeah, I'm gonna keep that one to myself. So open source Intel, obviously we made all this stuff possible. I'm gonna keep moving here so we can get to some other fun stuff if we have time. And I owe some much thanks, because I'm not a software guy or a reverse engineer by any means. And so the Kenny Powers to my kid with Mexican machine gun was James Bauer and Tom Ruff. They're not here today, and Tom wishes that he could be, and I love you guys. Thank you for sharing automatic weapons with me. It was a terrible idea, and we're about to see. So let's see what we could do with this digital stuff. And so, no, we're actually still cool. I presented all of this at Hacker Halted. Believe it or not, we're riding that line. And the lawyers did review this to some degree. So these devices, anybody want to understand, other than the U.S. with chicken pox, those are EAS devices that have been fingerprinted by Shodan within the past, I think I did like 6 months or something like that when I plotted it. But and I did feel special, because when you would go Google like this particular vendor, the first thing that would pop up on Google was my Shodan queries. So that's how much people search for these things, apparently, is a lot, right? But so of that, there's almost 2,000. This is one vendor's device. one vendor. There are like over 10 now. And that's not even getting into brands of digital FM transmitters and other things that these guys love to put on the internet and so forth. So we're going to end the talk here, and I'm gonna switch into a little bit of I shared this, I might as well. So a little thing called going nuclear, and then we'll turn off the video. You will be alerted by your public defense. So it might be this awesome little thing that I call zombie EAS. And we'll notice I misconfigured a couple of things down there that may or may not make this possible. And so will you survive? I have no idea, probably not. Statistics say zombies probably aren't ever going to happen anyways, but zombies in space, now that may happen. Yeah. So you may think about putting one of those in one of these and get a kit. Be prepared. Thank you, CDC. Some links for fun and goodies, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. And now we shall conclude the video. I don't know how much time we're at. How am I doing? Okay, so I'm way over. Do you guys want me to keep going? I promise I will try to, okay. Where do we start?